event. We already had 2 workshops, and now we are continuing with the set of presentations. But first, we would like to ask our addressees to greet our participants. Dr. Alexander Aristovnik, Director of Zavod 14 and University, coming from University of Ljubljana, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, distinguished guests, dear participants, dear partners, dear students, dear liberal friends. On behalf of Zavod 14 and Faculty of Public Administration of University of Ljubljana, it's indeed my honor and great privilege to welcome you all at our first international event this year. We are honestly delighted to have you all here at today's event, organized in cooperation with ELF, European Liberal Forum, and our partners Friedrich Naumann Foundation and Faculty of Public Administration, University of Ljubljana. As Zavod 14, as a non-profit civil society organization, aims to promote social liberal ideas, and today's event is focused on a very topical issue. It's about COVID-19 pandemic and its consequences on higher education policy, systems, and also students. Human history has recorded a number of substantial pandemics, including smallpox, cholera, AIDS, influenza. Then we had also West Nile diseases, tuberculosis. And today we are faced with another case. We have coronavirus. According to last data, we have already 38 million infections all around the world, and even more than 1 million deaths. These outbreaks made scientific and government became worried about the extent of the devastation of these outbreaks and also world economy and education. Indeed, the pandemic has changed the schedule of conferences and sport events, and institutions are canceling classroom-based classes and converting them to online sessions. Universities are being forced to consider large-scale preventing measures to keep students and professors healthy, as well to create plans for when infections materialize on campus. Universities have also been dealing with the impacts on exchange programs and foreign students. Higher education must continue to address this and other series of profound and complex challenges in the short time. The real danger, however, may be in the long-term effects of epidemic. Years of budget cuts and failures to meet students' basic needs make higher education especially vulnerable and potentially unequipped to handle a crisis like this. Current evidence, including our important and unique global survey, which we carried out a few months ago with more than 30,000 responses, and it will be presented later today, shows that female students, full-time students, undergraduate students, and students faced with financial problems were generally affected more by the pandemic in terms of their emotional life and personal circumstances. The results also demonstrated that the social science students, students with a better living standard, and those who were studying in Europe show greater satisfaction with the role of university in these times. The findings importantly call for public and higher education authorities to closely collaborate, together with other stakeholders, and urgently pay attention to vulnerable student groups while seeking to resolve the diverse, mostly negative consequences of the prolonged COVID-19 measures around the world. Despite COVID-19 has been accompanied by more than its fair share of obstacles for the higher education, there are also some opportunities. With many companies going out of business or being in jeopardy, employees are finding themselves either out of work or risk of losing their jobs. More people will be looking to universities for training they need to improve their lives and their job prospects. Additionally, people running to higher education, as well as new students. We recently see a huge number of students who apply for to universities. And we can see changes in priorities and career aspirations. Majors like business, economics, finance, engineering, as well as healthcare and public administration jobs may increasingly be preferred as they may open the door to more stable jobs. Further, as the economic downturn may leave people with fewer financial resources and closer to the home, the online universities and this digital transformation, which was pushed by COVID, offer a best of both solution, access to knowledge and skills conferred by universities via the optimal format of each student choice. The need to study at home necessity by COVID-19 has also some unexpected positive side effects, like dropping carbon output. And indeed, remote learning supports reducing the carbon footprint of higher education. Ladies and gentlemen, as one of famous revolutionary already 100 years ago said, there are decades where nothing happens, and then we have weeks when decades happen. We have now this situation, and we are not out of the wood yet. Just today, for example, in Slovenia, we recorded the highest number of infections, more than 700. In fact, we are still heading inwards. For higher education, the next few months are potentially going to be the most turbulent and influential of our lifetime. So COVID is no longer a short-term crisis for higher education. In this context, we are proud that we are today host this unique international event, which brings together reputable speakers, scholars, researchers, policymakers, and interest audience from around the world. We have over 30 plus countries participants at our event. And in respect of higher education aspects of the first wave of COVID-19 pandemic, with the aim of identifying the main challenges and potential solutions to these challenges in order to bring the most benefits for students, higher education management, liberal policymakers, and the society in general. Just before I conclude, let me just inform you that ZAO 14, together with its partner, will continue to host more international events, and you will be informed on time on this. On behalf of ZAO 14 and our partners, let me finally wish you an interesting and fruitful discussion and hope to see you again at our next events. And please do stay safe, responsible, and healthy during these turbulent times. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Arestonik. Now I would kindly invite Miloš Hodun, Vice President of the Board of Directors of European Liberal Forum ELF. So, Mr. Hodun, the floor is yours.
Hi, hello. Can you hear me well? Is it okay? Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for organizing this this important event. Thank you so much, ZAO 14, FNF, and the University of Ljubljana, which yeah, maybe this is not something I told you before, but this is a university that's very close to my heart, as I wrote my master thesis at this university. I spent fantastic 6 months some years ago at the law faculty of University of Ljubljana. So this event is even closer to my heart. It's not only the topic and the organizers, but also this particular organizer. So thank you very much for this cooperation. And but my the biggest thank you comes from on behalf of the European Liberal Forum and its board of directors, but on behalf of the organization itself, because this is the main organizer. And I would like to tell you to all of you what ELF is, because European Liberal Forum is the think tank and the foundation of the ALDE party. So it's a liberal think tank, liberal foundation, and we are also a cluster, a member-driven organization that unites around 50 think tanks and foundations, liberal foundations all over Europe. And also, as you can imagine, the pandemic has changed the way we work dramatically. As you can imagine, at the beginning of the epidemic of COVID-19, most or almost all our events were canceled, and then we were forced, like many of you, to find new ways of working, of new ways of promoting and our ideas and of creating these ideas. And as you can imagine, many of the events moved to the online sphere, to Zoom and other platforms. But also we realized really quickly that if we want to do good job and job that's interesting for our audience, our events must be very creative and innovative. So we could see a lot of movement, a lot of creativity among our member organizations, creating new formats, new ideas to to attract different kind of audience. And I can share you that, myself and my Polish organization from Warsaw is one of the event in a very hybrid format. We created a liberal studio in Warsaw, and we tried to connect people gathered in Warsaw with people from countries all over Europe, and give them this new and unique experience. And this is something that higher education unities, universities, and others, they also have to do, I believe. They also have to experiment. They also have to learn and look for new forms of teaching and of passing knowledge and of connecting and socializing the students, because university education and the experience of being a student, it's much more than just being taught by professors, but it's also this social experience that university in times of pandemic was missing for many, as it was very new for us, and we're looking for these new forms of interacting. We're looking for what to do. And I think that the world of think tanks and the world of universities, of higher education entities, it's basically going in the same directions. That in the time of pandemics, we can learn both from each other. That we can learn both of each other and tell each other how to work, how to do our job in the best way possible, in a very innovative and creative tools. Probably the world of think tanks and foundations is a bit more free here in experimenting, but I'm absolutely convinced that this knowledge can be circulating both ways, and we can and we must learn from each other. And I am also myself a university teacher, and I can see that everything has changed. I will start teaching this semester only in 3 weeks, so I still haven't started. But for me, preparing for this semester in the very new world of university in the pandemic, it is this brand new experience, something that we've never been through. And I'm absolutely convinced that teaching online, teaching in a hybrid way, it's something more than what we have been doing just in front of a camera. It's not that. It's just this very new philosophy, and that requires rethinking and having new methods and new tools. And because our main goal is to ensure the best quality of teaching, at least as good as we had before the pandemic, but also to ensure equal opportunities and equal chances, equal access to knowledge to all students who were enrolled in our institutions. So this is something we have to take in account, and we do, and we are going in this journey together. I mean, all of us universities all around Europe and beyond, but also all of us teachers and students. We are in this journey together, and we have to go through this journey together, and we have to be, I believe, patient with each other. And we hear many times now the questions is from the students: is the quality of the education you are providing the same as it was? Is the same high quality? Some people in some universities that are mostly private are also hearing the question, like, what about the tuition fees? Like, why do you charge the same tuition fees? Is it fair? Is really the same education? And I think this is not really, we shouldn't be offended by these questions, but we should be very patient to be able to identify and provide and communicate the solutions we have to the students, because they have the full right to ask these questions, and they have right to demand the highest quality education possible, regardless the difficult times we are having. So I think an event like that brings scholars and people who work on a higher education management, bring them together from all over Europe and beyond, probably, to exchange best and also worst practices for the benefit of us all, is crucial. This is why I would like to tell you one more time, thank you so much for organizing this important and topical event. Thank you so much, Zavod 14, FNF, University of Ljubljana, and I wish us all a very fruitful afternoon discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hodun. We asked also our Minister of Education, Science and Sport, Mrs. Simona Kustec, to join us, but she unfortunately had to apologize. In order to be on track, we will now continue with the presentations, and she kindly sent us the digital greetings, so we will display them just before the panel. So we will now continue with the presentations because we will have a bit more time then. Okay, thank you. And going on with the presentations, the floor is mine. So together with my colleague Dejan Raušel from the University of Ljubljana, we prepared a short description of the results of our research. So the core team of 5 researchers from our Faculty of Public Administration, together with more than 200 researchers from all over the world, performed a huge survey on how the students' life changed in the European spring 2020, after entering into this pandemic situation. So we are very grateful to all our colleagues that helped us collect this data. Some of the results are already published on our webpage. The link is here. And we are glad to tell also the good news from yesterday. We managed to publish the first international paper, and the other two more specific ones are already being prepared by a larger group of researchers. So more than 200 researchers joined from more than 100 countries and more than 150 institutions. We managed to gather more than 30,000 responses from students all over the world. And as we can see, a bit more than 1/3 was from Europe. Poland, Italy, and Turkey were the leading countries with the collected responses. Students were the youngest on average from Asia. They were 22 years old, from Europe 23.4, and from South America 26.8 years old. The students from Europe and Oceania were mainly coming from social sciences, arts, and humanistic sciences, while from the other parts of the world, they were from natural, applied, and life sciences. So the shock was quite big when going online, but unfortunately, all students didn't have the possibility to go online. As we can see, 86% of students from Europe reported that they went online, using video conferences as the main forum of receiving the lectures, the same as in both Americas and in Asia. While in Oceania, there were mainly recorded videos offered to students, and in Africa, there were presentations to students sent by an email. What does this mean for quality of education, as already mentioned by Mr. Hodun? So we have quite a few issues here, because on a global level, only 75% of students had a computer. Even more worrying, only 60% of students had good internet connection, and not connected to digitalization, but still only 52 had a quiet place to study. So we teachers were entering into their kitchens, living rooms, bedrooms, and vice versa, probably. Also regarding the skills, because on one hand, of course, we have infrastructure, equipment, but we have to have skills to use this equipment. So this data is quite worrying for Europe, for example, because students report that 53% of them weren't confident enough in using online teaching and collaboration platforms, which are necessary if we want to make study of a good quality. So we still have space for improvement here. The best results were in Oceania. This is predominantly New Zealand, and in a bit better than in Europe, in North America. So how did the students recognize the support from different departments of institutions? The assessments were from 1 to 5, and we can see here that students were the most satisfied with teaching staff, PR, public relations department, so any kind of information they were given during this crisis, and with tutors. And they were least satisfied with libraries, international offices, and finance accounting, which is probably quite understandable because they didn't have much contacts with them in online settings. So we asked them also whether they felt if there was any increase in study workload when going online compared to on-site study, and students from Oceania and Europe reported similar share, so in 60%, and then followed by Americas and other parts of the world. So being online was, of course, quite a change for everybody, and they felt different kinds of emotions. On a global level, boredom, anxiety, hopefulness, and frustration were the most exposed emotions, while when looking at Europe, we can see that students were frustrated and anxious, similarly as in both Americas and Oceania, while there was already some hope in Asia, maybe because they were a bit in front of us regarding the epidemics, and both in Africa and Asia, they felt a bit bored when being online compared to on-site situation. These feelings probably arose out of different kinds of worries they were feeling. These worries were on one hand short-term worries, for example, studying issues. So what will be with the lectures, with seminar work, and practical work, for example, and those also from more long-term, so professional career and future education. European students felt the first two. So what will be in the future career and studying issues. So this was quite similar also in Asia and Oceania, while American students felt also some worries regarding future education, and African about personal finances. The last data is regarding the trust into institutions around students. As was already mentioned by Dr. Aristonik, they trusted most the hospitals and the universities. In Europe, the third place was taken by government, because some governments offered help to students in different forms. First, financial, which were at that time a short-time solutions, but definitely there should be more steps to solve students get out of these worries and situations in the next 2, 3, and even more years if the pandemics go on and the consequences last for longer time. Okay, just shortly to repeat which are the fields where improvements should be made either on national or on EU level. So first, we have to ensure equipment for everybody and develop digital competencies both on the side of teachers and students. So this should be started also on previous levels of education. Then short-term support should be also given to different vulnerable groups of students, either financial support, social support, helping them solving housing issues. This will be discussed also in other presentations. And of course, a bit more long-term issues. We have problems now, both again, teachers and students not being able to go to taste, smell, and see different countries and different systems of education. And of course, we will have to invite employers to engage more with students now, to offer them practical work, internships, data for their activities, and so on. So the journey will be quite long in order to get back on track and also go on in the future. So this is regarding the general overview of our research. Now we will hear 6 presentations presenting specific countries' results. So first Slovenia, and then Italy, Romania, Poland, Croatia, and Bosnia. So welcome to hear these presentations. And now I would like to invite my colleague Dejan Raušel from our faculty and university to present the Slovenian data. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Nina, for your word. I hope that we can hear each other. Okay, I will just zoom my presentation. Just a moment. Okay, so yeah, my name is Dan, and I'm a researcher at the Faculty of Public Administration, and I will present you today a case of Slovenia. Okay, the case of Slovenia. So maybe just a brief introduction. So how all this mess, let's say, begins. So Slovenian government actually decided to close all school facilities, of course, including universities and faculties, from 16 March 2020. And some universities actually suspended personal attendance already a week before that day. Accordingly, as a consequence, 86% of students in Slovenia have switched from on-site to online study. The remaining 14% of students had actually online study before the lockdown as well. So here is the map showing school closures during the COVID-19 pandemic. And you can actually see that at that time, on March 16, that schools and universities were closed all around the world, with only few exceptions. For example, Australia, some countries in Africa, South Africa, and Mexico. So here I will list 3 main government measures taken in Slovenia, which influenced the universities and their students. Some of these measures were also mentioned before. So the first measure is that higher education institutions were able to make changes to mandatory obligations of their study programs, which became effective immediately. Then the second measure was that students who were unable to fulfill their obligations within the set deadlines due to the exceptional circumstances due to the COVID-19 gained a right to prolong their student status into the next academic year. And the last one is about that Slovenian full-time students with residence in Slovenia received a so-called crisis bonus amounting to 150 euros. And this was at the end of April. Here on the next slide, I have some general observations that we get from our student survey. Here I have findings for Slovenia in comparative perspective to other countries. So actually here in parentheses, you can see the ranking of Slovenia among other countries taken into our study. And as regards academic aspects, you can actually see that students in Slovenia were very satisfied with the organization of online lectures, because in this element, Slovenia is ranking on the 5th place among 55 countries. So second, students were very satisfied with the support of teaching staff as well. However, almost 2/3 of students in Slovenia perceived larger or significantly larger extent of workload. Then, as regard emotional aspect, almost 2/3 of students were often or always joyful, and on the other hand, less than 1/5 of students were never or rarely frustrated. So I think based on these results, we can say that Slovenian students were emotionally well. As regards financial aspects, the results for Slovenia show that almost 2/3 of students did not have financial problems compared to other countries taken into our study. And moreover, almost 1/3 of students were receiving a scholarship. And finally, as regards institutional aspects, students were very satisfied with the response of universities and hospitals, as Slovenia is ranking on the 8th place. However, students were not very satisfied with the response of government and banks. So you can see a very low ranking of Slovenia among other countries. So finally, we propose some policy recommendations, since according to the findings of our survey, so the results for Slovenia show that students with different socioeconomic characteristics have experienced the COVID-19 crisis very differently. Accordingly, the identification of vulnerable groups of students is needed. So we also identify these problematic groups, let's say, and for academic aspects, the problematic groups are so male students, part-time students, and students with financial problems. Further, for emotional aspects, the most problematic students are females, students with financial problems. As regards financial aspects, the vulnerable groups are students who lost their job or do not receive scholarship. And lastly, for institutional aspects, the most problematic groups were males, part-time students, and students with financial problems as well. So therefore, the provision of targeted support and adequate measures protecting vulnerable groups is needed and hardly acknowledged. So thank you for your attention. This was the case for Slovenia.
Okay, thank you very much, Dejan. Now I would kindly ask a colleague from Italy, Daniela Racanello, to present the data and the findings and some observations from Italy. Daniela, the floor is yours.
Can you see the slides? Can you see the presentation? Okay, I hope that you can see the presentation. I am presenting.
Daniela, we can't hear you. Daniela?
Can you hear me?
Okay, now we can hear
Yes,
you. Okay. Okay, go on.
Can you see the presentation?
Not anymore. Now we can see you only.
Just one moment, sorry.
Okay, we are learning. We are developing our digital skills.
I have a new computer.
Okay,
Really
no problem.
sorry. Now
Better equipment for new school year.
now you should see the presentation and hear
Ecco,
me, right?
ecco. Okay.
Okay.
So
I'm presenting a work relating to the case of Italy concerning the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on academic and especially.
Daniela,
Yes.
can you maybe we see a slide which is too small. Can you enlarge maybe? Perfetto. Okay, grazie. Huh?
Okay.
No. Now we can see nothing. It was before.
Just one moment. I'm sorry.
If you leave it like this, maybe. No, now we can see again yourself. Only. Okay, don't touch anything except page down. Okay.
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 Okay. Sorry.
Okay, grazie.
Sorry for that. I'm presenting a work on the impacts of COVID-19 pandemic on academic and especially emotional life of higher education students in Italy. The authors of this presentation are Daniela Raccanello, Giada Vicentini, and Roberto Burro from the Department of Human Sciences, University of Verona, Italy. In Italy, the first 2 cases of COVID-19 were certified at the end of January 2020. At the end of February, there were the first measures pertaining to lockdown. And at the beginning of May, there was the first loosening of the restrictions. Until now, there were more than 365,000 infected people and more than 36,000 dead people. Today, I present the findings relating to 2 different studies which involved Italian university students during the first wave of the pandemic. And these studies are based on a psychological theoretical background relating to 3 aspects. First, achievement emotions. Second, emotional impact of the pandemic. And third, coping strategies. Achievement emotions are the emotions that students feel in relation to learning activities or outcomes. According to theoretical approaches such as the control value theory, the main antecedents of achievement emotions are the beliefs on control and value. In particular, the beliefs on control refer to how much the students think that they can control their actions and their outcomes in a learning task. In turn, achievement emotions influence performance. Concerning the emotional impact of the pandemic, there is a real increasing number of studies documenting increases in both psychopathological symptoms, such as depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder, and negative emotions, such as fear. However, coping can be used as a multi-component psychological process that helps us to diminish the traumatic impact of stressful events. And coping strategies can be distinguished between adaptive strategies, such as problem solving, or maladaptive strategies, such as opposition to rules and authorities. Our first study focused on achievement emotions. We involved almost 2,000 Italian university students who participated to the survey online promoted by the University of Ljubljana and completed the survey during May and June 2020. Our first research question was, how did the Italian university students feel during the first wave of the pandemic? On the whole, our data indicate that negative emotions were more frequent than positive emotions. And as you can see from the figure, among negative emotions, anxiety and frustration were the most frequent emotions, while among positive emotions, hope was the most frequent emotion, in line now with the data on Europe that were presented before. Our second research question was control linked with achievement emotions? And our statistical analysis indicated that on the whole, the students with a higher perceived control felt better. As you can see from the red arrows, perceived control was associated to joy, hope, pride, and relief. And as you can see from the red arrows, it was associated to negative emotions such as frustration, anger, anxiety, shame, hopelessness, and boredom. Our second study focused on coping strategies. We involved a sample of almost 4,000 Italian university students from the University of Verona who completed the survey online, Coronavirus and Emotions. This survey was promoted by the University of Verona during March 2020. Our main research question was, how did the Italian students react during the first wave of the pandemic? And on the whole, our findings indicate that adaptive strategies such as accommodation or proactivity were used more frequently compared to maladaptive strategies such as despair or opposition to the rules. On the basis of these experiences, we propose 3 sets of policy recommendations. First, students need support. Our findings indicated that the pandemic had a negative emotional impact on university students, and this is detrimental for both their well-being and their academic performance. Therefore, university students need to be supported to cope with the consequences of the pandemic. Second, relevance of control beliefs. Control-related beliefs were linked to achievement emotions. Therefore, policy recommendations include implementing actions to improve beliefs on control through a variety of ways, enabling students to perceive that they still have the instruments for be students also in front of radical changes. Such actions include giving enough updated, reliable, not ambiguous, and motivated information, communicating changes promptly, offering interventions to modify causal beliefs of academic success and failure, and also improving the students' digital self-concept. Third, fostering emotional competence. Our findings indicated that some coping strategies are adaptive, while other coping strategies are maladaptive. Improving students' awareness on this can influence achievement, emotions, and performance. Therefore, authorities, policymakers, and universities can promote actions to increase knowledge on emotional awareness, particularly on adaptive coping strategies. Such strategies include activating on-site or online psychological support help desks, developing applications, online courses, or webinars to foster emotional competence, or conducting public communication campaigns. Examples of these were realized within the HEMOT project by the University of Verona, for example, through the development of a web application to foster emotional preparedness related to earthquakes with primary school children, or with the development of training for workers, which was conducted during the lockdown on coronavirus and emotions, or through the conduction of a public communication campaign which disseminated a pamphlet to help adults to cope with children and adolescents' emotions related to the pandemic. Here are the references, and thanks for your attention, and sorry for the technical problems.
Daniela, thank you very much. No problem. We are learning, as we said. So we had to test your emotional reactions. This is the issue. Okay, thank you, Daniela. Now we are welcoming Ana Maria Zamfir from Romania to present the data for their country. Okay, Ana Maria, welcome.
Hello, thank you.
Hello.
Let me share the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, I hope that you can hear me and see my presentation.
Perfect. Just go on. Thank you.
Okay, first of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. So my name is Ana Maria Zamfir, and I'm a researcher at the National Scientific Research Institute for Labor and Social Protection from Romania. I will present you the case of Romania based on data collected from 933 students from 22 universities. Similar with other countries, the Romanian higher education system has faced an unprecedented disruption due to the coronavirus pandemic. As you can see, 95% of the students have experienced the cancellation of their on-site classes. So the changes and shifts in educational approach were more rapid and significant in pandemic times as ever. Lectures and seminars transitioned in online, mostly via online in real-time video conferences. Also, sending online presentations to students and written communication have been used, but to a lesser extent. As you can see in the right chart, since on-site classes were cancelled, around 60% of students were satisfied by the organization of the online lectures and around 50% by the online seminars. Still, about 1/4 of students were dissatisfied by online lectures and seminars. Also, compared with the workload before on-site classes were cancelled, 2/3 of students said that their study workload has been larger or significantly larger. So another important aspect is that the share of students experiencing larger study workloads is much higher among bachelor students than among master students. Also, as you can see in the right chart, around 2/3 of students considered that they have adapted well to the new teaching and learning experience, but the share of well-adapted students is higher among master students than among bachelor students. Also, around 60% of students said that they can master the skills taught in online classes, but the share is lower again among bachelor students. More than 2/3 of students feel that it is more difficult for them to focus during online teaching in comparison with on-site teaching, while the difficulties are, once again, more frequent among bachelor students. Also, 45% of bachelor students and 1/3 of master students said that their educational performances have worsened. Regarding the required infrastructure for online classes, our data show that more than 1/4 of students have limited access to a quiet place to study, which is very important. Around 16% have limited access to a desk, 5% to a computer, and 10% to the needed software and programs. As you can see in the chart, important differences exist among students with financial difficulties and the rest of the students with respect to their access to the needed infrastructure. In the upper half of the chart, you have the students with financial difficulties, while in the bottom half of the chart, you have the rest of the students. So the differences are obvious. Which are the most important worries of Romanian students? First, they worry about their professional career in the future, as the global data already show us. This fact confirms the fact that young workers are highly vulnerable in pandemic times, and that school-to-work transition is more difficult in this period. Also, they worry about current studying issues and future education. The personal finance represents another reason of anxiety for more than 60% of students. And another important aspect we consider that is the fact that students are more worried about their mental health than their physical health. So we can notice that education-related worries are among the top 3 worries of the Romanian students, and I think that this is significant. Finally, a few words on the support measures or expected support measures. According to students' opinions, the most important support measures during pandemic times are emergency support granted for vulnerable people, emergency childcare for essential workers, and postponement of monthly payments. So concluding, we can say that coronavirus pandemic, of course, has affected the life of higher education students in a significant manner in Romania. According to our results, bachelor students have experienced more important difficulties in adapting to online education-related difficulties. Also, the data collected in Romania show that while the resilience of higher education system has relied extensively on online classes, socioeconomic disparities would widen the existing educational inequalities. So 1 week ago, a new school year has begun in Romanian universities with most of the lectures and seminars delivered online. So we think that in line with these results, authorities and universities need to provide a more consistent support to students, especially to bachelor students and those with financial difficulties. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ana Maria, for the Romanian data and findings. Now I would like to ask Beata Dobrovolska from Poland to present us their data. Beata, you're coming from Medical University of Lublin, right? So welcome at our set of presentations. The floor is yours. Unmute yourself, please. Okay.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. This is really interesting event, and it is good to know how the situation was and is developing regarding higher education and students' perspective. As I was introduced, wait a second, I have technical problem. Yes. As I was introduced, I represent Medical University of Lublin and data. I'm sorry. Yes. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can see. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. The national lockdown in Poland, was introduced in early March. As it was said before, in some countries, the same in Poland, some universities decided to close, decided to move to online learning 1 week before the national lockdown. And as you can see in the slide, I will try to share with you some very limited, some selected results based on a very big group of students surveyed in Poland, because it is the number of 2,742 students. 92% from this group admitted that their online on-site classes were cancelled. And regarding to infrastructure for studying from home required for online learning, as you can see, some stuff like a desk computer, required software, programs, quiet place to study, and good internet connection was on a level little bit higher than above international average. 95% of students admitted that they have often and very often access to a computer. However, student access to course study material was on a poor level. 44% of students admitted that often and very often this access was present. So this is the below international average. On this slide, you can see satisfaction with online education, but based on very limited selected results. There are two lines. Red line is for international average, and blue line represent Polish mean values, mean results. When it comes to satisfaction with lectures, was a little bit higher than satisfaction with seminars, practical classes, which is important from my perspective because I represent very practical education. Then when it comes to satisfaction with teaching staff, the trend was also visible higher in comparison to satisfaction with the university dealing with COVID-19 pandemic. Anyway, these mean values are around 3 and a little bit higher than 3. So they are really in the middle, let's say. Then I would like to show you the way the students adapted and their performance in new teaching learning environment. And here again, we can see two lines, the red one representing international average and the blue one representing Polish students' answers. Considering that the measure was from 1 strongly disagree to 5 strongly agree, we can see that student admitted difficulty to focus on during online teaching. It was very the same for Polish cohort and for international average. And also we can see that their improved performance was assessed as little bit lower. And lastly, on this slide, I would like to present some emotions and workload of students during online education. So when we combine answers larger and significantly larger, we can see that 56% of students admitted that this workload yes, was at this level larger and significantly larger. When it comes to emotions, we can see a very different one. Of course, this is very plain analysis, and it should be done in a deeper way to compare and to find a reason why. So we can see joyful present in 56% of Polish students, but also frustration, anger, and anxiety when we combine answers often and always. What is also visible, 60% of Polish students admitted that they are worrying about the future education, and it is not visible on slide, but also the percent is even higher that students are worrying about the future career. Given these very selected results from the global data, this is visible that there is a need for different strategies coming from different parties, different stakeholders regarding supporting students in this online education, also teachers, especially when it comes to practical learning, which I mentioned is important from my perspective and from perspective of faculties which deliver very practical education. But also psychological support, which is needed regarding the visible workload and emotions admitted that experienced by students. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Beata. Hello. You are still on the camera, but we will now invite Alka Obadic from Croatia to hear the Croatian case. So, Professor Obadic, welcome.
Yes, hello.
Okay, hello. We can now hear you.
Yes,
First
okay.
stage. And see the slide.
You
Okay.
can see also the slide, I hope.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
Okay.
You're
So,
welcome.
Hello to everybody. Well, my name is Alka Obadic. I'm coming from Faculty of Economics and Business from University of Zagreb, and I will say some some results from the case of Croatia, considering this international survey. First of all, I am glad that I had the opportunity to be one of the members, how to say, or researchers involved in this huge investigation. So, considering Croatian case, first of all, I would like to say that Croatian government closed all schools and universities from 13th of March. So we can say that lockdown practically started on 13th March 2020 in Croatia. Considering all that, we find out in this research that students in Croatia were mainly concerned about their studying issues, but those at the University of Zagreb had also additional mental health consequence as a consequence of the 22nd of March big earthquake which happened in Zagreb. At that time, luckily, a majority of students which are studying at the University of Zagreb were already at their safe at their homes, but also a lot of students were still in Zagreb. So we had two shocks in Croatia. In Croatian part of the survey, we have a sample. So we have a sample of 687 unique responses, which makes around 2.2% proportion of all responses in these surveys. Institutions which were covered with this research in Croatia consist of 6 public universities: University of Zagreb, University of Pula, University of Osijek, Rijeka, Split, and Zadar, and 1 private, Zagreb University of Applied Sciences. Speaking about academic life in Croatia, well, we can see that students were dominantly satisfied with online lectures. Especially, they were satisfied with video conferences in real time. So 3.8 is we can see here compared to international average. And in the same time, they were really a good satisfaction with online with audio recording. Considering satisfaction with the organization on site classes, students in Croatia were very satisfied with on-site classes, but mainly with lectures. We can see that 3.6, and less with seminars and practical classes. But that is maybe not the case in international average of that survey. So we can see also at the University of Zagreb that majority of students were much more happier and satisfied with lectures than with seminars and practical classes. And then speaking about social life, well, during the COVID pandemic, students communicated mostly, of course, online. They mostly communicated with their roommates, with people with whom they live with, and also with close family members. Considering life circumstances, well, here we can see that students in Croatia were mostly worried with studying issues, which means with lectures, seminars, 42%. And surprisingly, they were less worried about their, for example, professional career in the future. So only 29% of all students in Croatia were worried with their professional career in the future, and we can see that in all other countries that percentage is much higher. So also considering some future education, well, students in Croatia were not so much worried about their future education compared to international average. So just 1/3 of all students were worried about their future education. And at the end, some general observations. Well, we find out, considering student experiences, well, that student experiences really vary from positive to negative one. So, for example, positive, the majority of students, they are happy, especially those who study at work, with online classes because they did not have to spend time traveling and going to college. And it was also helpful for them to be able to record the lectures and repeat their view. However, some of them stated also that they like online lectures, but when it comes to exercises or similar tasks, they prefer live instructions. What we must admit that was also maybe expected. Considering some negative observations, well, students said that they have a problem with lack of computer skills and the perception of a relatively higher workload, which prevented them from perceiving higher performance when adapting to the new normal. And some of them also pointed out that their internet connection was creating problems for them. And now at the end, we can give some recommendations for policymakers. Considering the results of this survey, students listed certain segments in which considers additional involvement of higher education institutions or other stakeholders, primarily in their organization, online exams, enabling live exercises, or better organization of online exercises. As they also recognized and highlighted that the uneven adaptation of teaching staff to distance learning was present in majority of our universities and faculties, so that they believe how it's necessary for all teachers to teach and to adapt the content and materials to a greater extent in a new form of teaching. In the segment of socio-psychological aspects of teaching in a virtual environment, students who are participated in the research stated that it is necessary to provide psychological counseling to all students and have an understanding for individual situations. Higher education institutions should seek feedback information from students and make a unique decision on how to study during such situation. So that will be all from the Croatian case. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Alka.
Okay.
Thank you. And now we are inviting our last presenter from Bosnia and Herzegovina, Maja Arsanagić-Kaleđić from University of Sarajevo.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, Maja, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. And hello to everybody. I'm very happy, as well as other colleagues said, to be the part of this event and also to be able to share some of our experiences with you. Just a second, so I can share my screen. Is there an option that I share just the PowerPoint presentation? So, one moment, please. Okay. I hope this is visible now.
Yes, okay, great.
Good.
Great, Maja.
So one difference maybe against other panelists is that I will be presenting the case of Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is actually a developing country and also a non-EU country. So maybe these experiences could be seen from this angle as well. As my other colleagues, first of all, yes, I'm coming from the University of Sarajevo, from the School of Economics and Business Sarajevo, and I was responsible for data collection in Bosnia. I would first like to state some of the methodological aspects when it comes to the case of B&H. So in our country, we managed to collect the sample of 409 unique responses by using various means of engagement of students throughout the country. And what is extremely beneficial is that we have managed to cover a representative sample from the country, meaning that we covered 7 out of 8 public universities, and here is the list on the slides, and also several prominent private universities in the country. In the sample, students are coming from various faculties, a variety of programs are included, as well as different years of study, bachelor or master's level, and different demographic background. So this is actually a rich and variable insight that is enabled throughout the study. I have actually listed some of the main observations that were interesting to me to share with you today. In example, 80% of students in Bosnia had their on-site classes cancelled, and most of them have been immediately transferred to the online mode of work, for which they're relatively satisfied. And this is really varying from institution to institution, because some institutions were ready and they have engaged in virtual presentations and classes immediately, and some institutions were only sending emails or posting materials online as the first answer to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, students also believe that lecturers had relatively timely response with their online materials. But when it comes to communication, mentorships and advisory activities were held mainly by email. So there was not too many conference calls, there were not too many calls or on-site visits during the pandemic. What is very important, in my opinion, is that from these results, we can see that not only basic, but also the additional equipment was available to students in more than 80 cases. For example, a quiet place, a desk, and a computer. However, what I found very interesting is that only 25% of the sample had a printer as an additional equipment. Here I have actually illustrated two of our cross-country slides, or actually cross-country charts, where Bosnia and Herzegovina could have been seen. And the first one is related to students' adaptation and performance in new teaching and learning environment. And you can see that here, sorry, I don't know why I've left to the final page, is that actually Bosnia had improved performance, and it is among the top 3 when it comes to improved performance as reported by students. And in the other one that is talking about change of selected habits, we are actually in the bottom 3, where actually shaking hands was not as much changed as in other countries. And this I found interesting, because these are the only 2 images where Bosnia and Herzegovina came up across the international sample. So what I found really relevant for this conference is actually how we reacted institutionally, and how it is related to higher education policy. So in general, students are actually satisfied with the response of their university. It is slightly above the average, since the international average is 3.26, whereas our average is 3.35. However, they're dissatisfied with the institutions. With the response of hospitals, it is 5th from the bottom in the whole sample, and also with the response of ministries and other relevant institutions for higher education policy. There we had the worst score, and it is 4th from the bottom of all countries in the sample. And unfortunately, this situation is still continuing. So since COVID-19 pandemic is unfortunately the ongoing situation, we still have an inadequate response of policymakers to this whole situation. And I believe that this is due to the complexity of the whole country, because in Bosnia, university is not regulated at national level, but it is regulated at the level of different entities, and also at the level of cantons, which are the lower actually governance level at the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. So in example, in my university, University of Sarajevo, we are regulated by Canton Sarajevo, who actually had emergent meeting about higher education on October 5th. And on October 5th, they were actually deciding very relevant things about the new academic year, which was actually supposed to start on October 5th. So there we have insufficient coordination among the regulators and among the policymakers, and also insufficient amount of transfer of these regulations and policies to universities as implementers. On the other hand, I also put some quotes of students that actually demonstrate the difficulties of situation, however, also some of their positive thoughts. So, for example, they have learned a lesson that we all need people around us, and that they appreciate technological developments that make communication so easy. And also that they have appreciated teaching experience in an online sphere. However, still they outlined that governments should be better prepared. Thank you very much for your attention. This would be all from my side.
Thank you, Maya. Thank you very much. So we finished with our presentations. Thanks to all presentators, but we still have a debt. So we will now put on the speech of our Minister of Education, Science and Sport, Dr. Simona Kustec. It takes 15 minutes to be finished, and then we continue with our panel. So welcome back after 15 minutes. And if any questions and suggestions, we will then start in our panel to give you the chance to put them either in chat or directly. Thank you very much.
Dear students, dear professors, dear researchers, dear other participants at the ELF Higher Education Students and COVID-19 Consequences and Policy Implications event. Let me tell you about some of the perspectives that are in our minds as the policymakers, as the decision makers in the name of the ministry nowadays when it comes to the question of how to implement the educational type of policy in the field of higher education in those quite unexpected but still realistic situations that are going on with the COVID virus. Speaking from the Slovenian point of view, first of all, I need to emphasize that Slovenia is one of the smallest countries, not only in the European Union, but around the world. And that when it comes to the question of the real capitals that small countries have, then the knowledge is actually probably on the first place. And being aware of that fact, we even more additionally put attention to the stability of the educational system in those strange times that are defined by the COVID-19 situation. So our starting point actually when we decided how to react further on was based on the fact that we need to find the solutions that will enable the stability of the educational system and implementation in those quite unstable circumstances and situation. And this was actually the starting point also for us when we were thinking how to move on with the higher education part of the system. We knew that we need to finish the previous academic year, as well as we know that we need to start as successful as possible and continue with the new academic year 2021. And it was a challenge actually during the holidays times how to move on in those circumstances, what would be the best possible approach or way that we would like to take to achieve this goal. First of all, we needed to think about the nature of the problem that we are facing with, and to see who is actually the one that needs to respond and into what kind of manner this response is supposed to look like. And speaking about the COVID-19 situation, we know that this is a kind of a health-related type of a natural, higher force type of a problem that at this moment we are not able to solve by ourselves, by our knowledge, not even through the expert knowledge. We do put all our forces into this, especially our colleagues from the natural sciences. But at this certain moment, we know that we have a problem, and that this problem is right now still not solvable in a way, and that we need to struggle also not through the search in the field of natural sciences solutions, but also especially in the field of more like a social and human type of understanding of the problem and reactions to the problem. So this was kind of the framework that from the problem point of view that we needed to discuss, that we needed to find the possible ways and solutions according to the existing situation. And in this regard, what we also did was to check what and how these first reactions in the field of higher education were in the previous academic year, in this springtime of the previous academic year. What type of measures did we activate, how we respond to them, and what was a kind of a type of a SWOT analysis based on this. So what were the positive, the strength parts, and the weakness part of those reactions. And the fact was that we did this over the night, that we didn't have any kind of experiences, but on the other side we were able to finish the previous academic year, and we maintain a kind of a stability, a kind of a continuity of the whole system, and this was very, very important. And these were the main, I can call them the principles, based on which we were able actually to continue or to build the strategy of the higher educational approach also for this academic year. So the adaptation, the activation of the procedures which will prevent the spread of the COVID-19 situation. So we are speaking about the kind of epidemiological type of the experts recommendations that we need, or guidelines that we need to follow, be it inside the university or wider in the campus. So this was the one thing, a kind of a precondition, and then the content part of the measures that would enable the stability and continuity of the academic year, and is based actually mostly on the approaches, how to deliver the knowledge in those circumstances. And in this regard, we activated a kind of approaches that we call the hybrid type of the teaching. That means smaller groups, the mixed kind of teaching, some part in the class and some part from the distance, and kind of the adaptation of those conditions, respecting also the wider health preconditions and statuses of the professors on one side, and of course the students, and also the whole university staff on the third side. So the combination of everything that was needed to consider, that was kind of addressed when we were searching for the new solutions, for the new approaches, but everything with the main goal and the main mission that we find the way how to move on and how to continue with the academic year. So the third part that was very important when we did this is the part that I would call modus operandi of the whole system approach to this kind of situation. And it turned out that the only and absolutely the best way how to do it is the cooperation, is the participation, is the way how we listen to each other, and how we can find the ways, the solutions that would be as optimal as possible for all the involved stakeholders in this process, from the students to the professors and of course to the staff. So it means that cooperation on one side with a lot of patience, with a lot of mutual support, understanding, and engagement were those elements that actually link together the whole activation and now already the implementation of the higher educational process in these times. So the crucial in all this story is that we have a living type of a process, that we get the right support for the implementation of the process in place early enough. So that means that we need to involve all their interests, their solutions, and see how they do adapt, how they do fit into what we need to fulfill or follow when we are implementing higher educational process. So this all was mostly the search for very different but still creative ways. Something that we, with our level of knowledge, are actually kind of supposed to do. It is actually expected from us at the level of higher education that we would be the first innovators of the new ways, of the adaptive ways to the problem type of situations. And we also need to be aware of the fact that we need to find a way how to respect on one side educational needs and goals that we need to fulfill or that we need to grab, but on the other side how this would be possible with something a bit different than it is usual, and how to include all the involved into this story, not only with their rights and responsibilities, but also with their commitments, and also kind of understanding that we need to do this together. So because this will enable the whole process to stay alive and to stay in a way differently strong. So I'm speaking here about something that could have a common denominator of kind of a strong strategies and commitments to continue with the process of education at the higher level in general. There is no single right recipe how to do it. And probably we will not even be able to find it. Hopefully the COVID-19 situation will just pass away much before we would be maybe able to find something like that. But what is very much important right now is that we do talk a lot, that we do share our experiences, share our also best possible practices from various perspectives, either from the sole understanding of the problem in which we are, the problem period in which we are living right now in relation to the higher educational system, or how the best possible modes of teaching are being activated, or just about the effects, the kind of implementation practices that we are facing right now. So the most important is that we do have a dialogue, that we do exchange our thoughts and our ideas, and that we do help each other in this way, with the understanding that we all are kind of embraced with the same problem, whenever and wherever we are coming from, and that we do need here also that kind of a forums as also your ELF forum is representing, and in this regard do really accept my sincere thanks for enabling that kind of debates according to the agenda event schedule that I went through your event. I'm much more than sure that you're going to have a very, very fruitful and very successful debate from various perspectives, and I do wish you all the best and am looking very much forward to the conclusions and to the findings, to the responses that you are going to get us back after the end of your event. I wish you all the best, stay stable, stay successful, even though in those a bit different, strange times, and especially also stay healthy. All my best. Thank you.
Okay. Hello to everybody. So we are starting our panel. I will do some introduction and then introduce each of you when I come to questions for you. So post-millennials or Generation Z have been described as the first true digital natives, growing up without memory of a time before smartphones or social media. So when the EU moved into lockdown in March 2020, and when life moved online, you might expect this generation to be the most prepared to handle the change. However, the research of University College of London suggests that this generation feels they are missing out on the best years of their lives, having been told to stay inside, losing access to university campuses, their social life, and job opportunities. According to the survey of the COVID SOTS Lab, which involved more than 200 researchers from 150 institutions from more than 100 countries, we found out that the students' lives changed drastically. This was spring 2020, but the outlooks for the autumn and winter are not very encouraging, at least in Europe. So, did we learn anything for the near and far future? What worked well in spring and what should be improved in order to support our students and our future workforce as efficiently as possible? What kind of support do they need and who should provide this support? We will find this out together with our panelists coming from different countries and with different backgrounds. Warmly welcome everybody, and let's start. First, I would like to greet Dr. Jana Javornik. So we are honored that you joined us. You are a Director General at the Higher Education Directorate of the Slovenian Ministry of Education, Science and Sport. So you are the most competent person to be asked which were the key 2 to 3 measures taken by the Ministry of Education, Science and Sport of Slovenia in the context of higher education system during the first wave of COVID pandemic in spring 2020. Dr. Javornik, please.
Thank you all. Let me just start a video. Okay, I'm here. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jana, as Nina has kindly introduced me. So many thanks for the invitation and the opportunity to actually represent the ministerial experience, because it was quite traumatic, as you can imagine, as it was yours, no doubt. Considering that the minister has just spoken, I'll just focus on the more brutal operational side of the whole epidemic element. So as you were, we too were sailing through uncharted waters at that time. And in Slovenia, higher education institutions had a slight head start because of our incoming Chinese students in December. And they were expected to fly in January and obviously needed accommodation. And on the other hand, we had Slovenian students overseas and international students in Slovenia. And if in doubt, get out was the international community advice at the time. And we really had to stall the panic, largely among the parents. So the panic spread fast at that time, and we set up a call center and helplines, ironically, at our ministry and our directorate. So you can imagine that the first calls that we were receiving were really about travel advice. They were about the virus, and they were not about education. They were not about science. They were not about the science of the epidemic. But as things started to kind of cool down and the state was organizing itself more and more, obviously we were receiving more kind of like focused questions and comments. And all of us at that point muddling through, we needed partners and expert advice. And quite honestly, no one actually knew what was going on at that time. And the virus was as old as the epidemic at that point. So we approached the Ministry of Health and National Institute and set up a multi-agency group at the ministerial level in January already, and started preparing the first package of guidelines and advice to higher education institutions. And senior leadership of our 4 public higher education institutions were all invited to the table from day one, as we started organizing evacuation flights and informing the sector about the virus and the measures. So you asked me about 3 things that we did. I think kind of like surviving the first shock, we then went into the legal framework and introduced a number of legal amendments that were required because of the relatively bureaucratic red tape that frames what the universities in Slovenia can actually do, and then introduce the emergency student allowance in the amount of 150 euro, which was a one-off stipend to the students who studied in Slovenia. So there's plenty more to say, but there are also plenty of speakers. So I'll stop at this point and continue later on.
Okay, thank you very much. This will be now the first round. I would kindly ask all the participants who are listening to put some questions, remarks, suggestions to chat, and then we can ask our panelists to answer them. So if we go on, Dr. Dan Podjet, you are an anthropologist who calls himself a professional voyeur. During this pandemic and the consequent lockdown, you were stuck between the walls, not being able to do your research on people in our society, what you usually do. But you were observing yourself and your family members intensively and wrote a book about that. However, we would still like to know whether there was anything interesting you were observing in the behavior and habits of higher education students, and maybe also us, teachers, during the lockdown and later during the summer. When being online, many different stakeholders got an opportunity to see us in our kitchens, living rooms, etc., right?
Yes. So thank you very much for inviting me to this panel discussion. So this is a very interesting time in human history, also anthropologically. Our habits have changed significantly in the past half year. We have started to greet each other differently, so we don't shake hands anymore. Instead, we raise our hands similarly to Mr. Spock, from the science fiction series and greet each other, or we bank our fists, or we greet each other with elbows. So this is something which has become really internalized, also habituated. And I was surprised as an anthropologist that people accepted this so quickly, this kind of new habits. And it's similar with students. I was fascinated how quickly they switched to the online medium, because no wonder they are, after all, the digital natives. We are not here in this panel. And it was a very natural environment for them to switch to. However, for us, the teachers, there was a different situation and a bigger, much bigger problem, actually. So after having a lecture for an hour and a half online, I'm usually exhausted, tired after Zooming or Skyping for hour and a half. And if I do it offline, so in an actual physical setting, I'm invigorated, inspired, I go home refreshed. And yesterday I had the first class of this year in the physical lecture room. And I really hope it won't be the last one for this year, because it felt completely different. And what's interesting for me anthropologically, again, is how we started to make our own little Potemkin villages in our homes. For example, here I'm now in my bedroom to reveal the background of this roll-up here, which I put up because I don't want to reveal everything that is in the background. And and it's also interesting how I have an opportunity to see in your homes, for example, to see what does your kitchen look like or bedroom look like. So we're opening windows and doors to our homes, and sometimes we do it not very cautiously, actually, because it's not only the teachers looking in your homes, it can be also other institutions which are the founders of Zoom and Skype, and which are interested to see what are you doing at home. So I'm also fascinated by these artificial backgrounds like Jana Javornik is using. So I don't know what is behind her, but this is another way to hide your physical reality. Anyway, to make it short, this is an incredibly interesting time for anthropologists to do a research, even though we are stuck indoors. And I'm just worried that that this is only the beginning of the new era, of the era of the Homo Covidensis. This is the beginning of the transition from the risk society to the surveillance society. And here we have to be really careful whether what we are giving up at the moment, because we want to protect each other and to prevent the spread of virus, but at the same time we have to protect also our privacy. This is the main good that is really endangered in this situation, and I really hope there will be debates about this also in the classroom.
Thank you very much, Dr. Podjet. Dr. Iva Boštjančić, you are a psychologist and a professor whose students moved from the classrooms behind the screens due to the spring lockdown. Please tell us, was this move a bigger challenge for students or for teachers?
Thank you for your question, Nina. My first answer would be for teachers, definitely, because we are older generation, we were completely unprepared. Even the University of Ljubljana had a huge project about 3-4 years ago about to internalize information technology inside us, to be part of our daily routine pedagogical work. But I think the university didn't succeed, but the COVID succeeded. So we suddenly we were like, suddenly students and the professors, we were put out of the box. So we felt insecure without any proper guidance, information, how to deal it. And it a lot depended on personality of each professor. So some of them were more advantaged, more flexible, and they adapted to a new situation very easily. But some of them, they have problems. On the other side, the students, they approach a huge challenge, how to they were missing the social contacts. So it was so difficult for them how to find these social contacts inside their families, or maybe just inside their homes. I think that was really a huge challenge for the generation that we are meeting each other, that we meet each other on daily basis at faculties. So our research showed that the generation that had the most problems in the COVID era in the spring was the generation of the generation, this is in puberty or younger adults. So not the older ones, like we thought it would be like the retiree, but the students or younger employees, that was the group that had the most problems in the spring. So in my opinion, it's going to be the same or very similar now in autumn, in coming winter.
Thank you very much, Eva. Mr. Thomas Clausen, you are a coordinator for education and research in the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, which is a member of the ELF network. This is European Liberal Forum, who is also a co-organizer of today's event. And this forum is a German liberal think tank. We would like to know, how does your foundation look at the role of the state and other institutions when dealing with COVID-19 challenge, especially in the field of higher education? So which German and which EU institutions dealt with the student issues during the first wave of the COVID pandemic? And are there any best practices we could learn from German case, for example?
Yes, thank you, and thank you for having me. So there was no single institution responsible in Germany. As you might know, the German education system is quite complex. We have different responsibilities for the federal government, the 16 states or Länder, and the individual universities. And then there's also the Association for Student Affairs, the Studentenhilfswerk, which also plays an important role as a semi-public institution. So there was no coordinated response, neither at the beginning nor now. Universities transitioned differently to online learning. And initially there was also fear for a lost semester, but that was fortunately not the case. But of course, the big question is financing. So to give you a little bit of background, and when it comes to providing financial assistance to students, the main provision has always been the so-called BAföG, which is funded by the federal government. And eligible students receive up to 861 euros per month, and they only have to pay back half of it. But the provision depends on the financial circumstances of the parents and of the student, of course. And it is only paid for during the regular duration of the studies, and this becomes quite important when we talk about Corona. So not everyone receives this type of funding. A lot of students have to work part-time and they need to rely on their parents. And if they are lucky, they might receive a scholarship. And one of those scholarship providers is also the Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom. But when it came to Corona crisis, now the Federal Ministry for Education and Research introduced two measures, basically. So the first were interest-free loans provided by the Federal Bank for Reconstruction, the KfW, starting in March. And the other are sort of special payments coordinated through the German National Association for Student Affairs. The federal government provided initially 100 million euros. And from June to September, so starting quite late, students could apply for a one-off payment between 100 and 500 euros, depending on the individual need, which they did not have to pay back. And in addition, and that was very important for the BAföG, the last summer semester did not count towards the regular duration of study. So these were basically the initial financial responses. I think we will talk about some of the problems and some of the challenges that came with implementing these measures later, but this is a sort of general introduction to the German situation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clausen. Let's go and ask students. So the European Liberal Youth, abbreviated as LIMEC, is a pan-European youth organization seeking to promote liberal values throughout the EU. Ms. Ines Holzega, you are a coordinator of the European Liberal Student Network in LIMEC and a student at a master level. So you are the right one to be asked about what was going on in students' lives and in their heads last spring. But before asking you this first question, I would like also to ask other participating students to insert the observational questions for our panelists in the chat. Now we still have no question. Everybody's only listening. So, Mrs. Holzega, which areas of students' life were, according to your network's observation, hit most by this first wave?
Yes, thank you for the invitation. It's a very important topic, I think, especially for all students out there that are currently in this situation. I want to start with something a bit personal. As you said, I'm a master's student. I'm actually doing an Erasmus Mundus master. So I am in 3 different universities and countries in 3 semesters. Which coincided with, unfortunately, the COVID first wave. So I started my 2nd semester in this situation. And I was one of the lucky ones because I was an EU citizen, but within my program, there were also a lot of students who were not EU citizens and who faced way more challenges when it came to mobility, to administrative barriers. But I think all of us experienced a lot of personal and social, as was already mentioned, impact. And for the work at universities, as was mentioned, group work was really difficult to coordinate, even for digital natives. But having a live discussion is, of course, more productive than having this online. But I would say the most pressing issue was the uncertainty. So not knowing what will happen within the next weeks, let alone months, at the end of the semester. So this is a really big issue, and it still is. Another thing that especially the European Liberal Student Network looked at was the mobility. So the Erasmus mobility, I think we will talk about it too at a later point, but this posed some challenges for students that were already accepted to do this mobility, or for students that were abroad that did not know what to do now, having this switch to digital teaching. Yeah, in the end, there's several universities also from what I heard also from colleagues in the network that were not really prepared to switch to digital teaching methods, because this is not just a way of doing it just digital, but you need to change a whole approach. You need to go at teaching a whole different way. And this was a lot of times a missed opportunity. But as LIMEC, of course, we saw that this can also be a chance for youth to do something, to have our voices also heard. So within LIMEC, 27 of our member organizations got together. They brought in their ideas, amongst others also on education. And we now have 10 measures that we want to lobby for, and also in the education sector, like have an online platform where people, especially young people across the EU, can access online training and education. So yeah, that's for now, but I'm very happy to hear some questions and answer more.
Okay, thank you for your input. Let's go on and finish the first round with Mrs. Emily von Zweigberg. You are a representative of FORES, which is Forum for Reforms, Entrepreneurship and Sustainability. This is a green and liberal think tank in Sweden that wants to renew the debate with a belief in entrepreneurship and creating opportunities for people to shape their own lives. You have many experiences in field of higher education. So we will ask you, what was the specifics of the so-called Swedish way during the first wave of the COVID-19 pandemic? And was this way also very different in the higher education system compared to other European countries, maybe? Please.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Emily von Zweigberg, and hope you hear me now. Good. Well, so is Sweden different, or were we different during spring? I would say all countries are different and special in their way. And Sweden is very different in one way. We are extremely sparsely populated. For every square kilometer in Sweden, you have 22 inhabitants. You can compare that with Italy, for example, who has 205, Germany 226, and the Netherlands, I think it's much more than 400 people per square meter. So social distance in Sweden is rather easy, really, to get. It's difficult to find a lot of people. So we have the kind of opposite problem. And so that's one thing with this social distancing. We had our first COVID-19 case in the last of January. Then we have the second case, the 26th of February. So a month later, we had number 2. And the 14th of March, we had a first death case. Just 1 month later on, we had the top notch in death. An escalating exponential outbreak. We had 3,000-4,000 people who died within 2 months' time. And now we have a rather low number of deaths. We have something like 5 deaths per million the last 30 days. So that's rather low. On the other hand, it's going up as in many countries. So what is the Swedish way? Well, I think Sweden had the same goal as everyone, you know, to keep down, to keep healthcare going on and try to get economy through this. But maybe we had a more measure approach without any lockdowns. We had no requirements for face mask, and we relied on everyone's responsibility on an individual case. Everyone was told to stay at home. If you were even so little sick, wash your hand, keep social distance, etc., etc. And I think one of the differences really was endurance. We thought already from the beginning that this might take 1 to 2 years. So we have to have rules that would be possible to keep on to for 1 or 2 years. And we didn't want to have to change these rules all the time. I know there were photos circulating internationally about a party in Stockholm during March and April. But I think living in the city, in the middle of Stockholm, I think those journalists, they had to look for a long time to find those parties in March and April, because most streets in Stockholm, they were as empty as in Italy or Spain. Another thing that's special with Sweden is that it was the authorities and not the government who took a grip of the situation. And what they did, for example, was to close the universities. So the the universities were closed from the 19th of March, and we had online learning until August this year. Though primary schools were not affected, so children up to the age of 15, they could go to school all spring and still. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's take a second round. Of course, if nobody dares to type a chat from the public, you can also ask each other. So the panelists can also insert the questions into the chat if you want to. Okay, Dr. Javornik, you already mentioned some amount of money that was given to students in Slovenia. So this was, of course, also involvement of Ministry of Finance and so on. So were there any other ministries involved in supporting the students? Was this happening so quick that the EU and the European Commission didn't have time to be involved in these measures, or were there any measures harmonized already with the European Commission?
Not quite sure what measures should be and could be at that point aligned, because as I said, everyone was muddling through. So whoever went first was then checking with other colleagues what has been done and what worked and what didn't. And it took about a month, I think, for the European Commission to actually call a learning network at which the Directors General could actually talk to our peers and learn from what was happening in real time, because everyone was honestly really swamped with, kind of like overwhelmed with the shock that happened, and we had to close down. And as the lockdown was introduced, everyone was trying to kind of muddle through. So in terms of the ministerial cooperation and partnership in Slovenia, Ministry of Finance was just in kind of giving the money from the budget we all contributed to. So some money was taken away from every ministry to be contributed to that unique new lump sum from which we then took the money from. In terms of the Ministry of Health, that was incredibly important at the beginning. Then the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the evacuation of our own students, as well as the international students, to fly them safely back home and reunite them with their families. Then the colleague mentioned the Erasmus network. We cooperated with the students. We talked to the Student Association in Slovenia. We talked to student reps in student halls. So I think because we went digital so fast, and as you've been in this country for longer than I have, this country isn't really very digital when it comes to public administration, but we were forced into going digital overnight, so it was relatively easy and quite affordable to be getting in touch with colleagues from across the universe, literally, as well as some of the stakeholders that the ministry was not traditionally very openly communicating with in the past. So as the minister mentioned earlier, I think there was a lot of real partnership going on as we were trying to find solutions that would at least kind of bring us through. And as colleagues from the University of Ljubljana mentioned earlier, it really was a struggle and challenge, because not only we had been investing for the past 15 years in training and upskilling higher education lecturers in Slovenia, it just didn't pay off. And overnight, it really showed that the skills were just not there. So that was one issue we had. The other one was obviously the ICT. So the communication technology was just not on par. And which is why, and I know this will be the following question, is we've introduced a hybrid model for the new academic year, because that was actually one lesson we've learned. It's not only students who struggle with poor internet connection, with poor working conditions or studying conditions at home, it's also academic staff. So the question that we have, and the question that we struggle with most, is how to make a decision that is both sustainable and also keep our staff and students safe. And as you know, we experimented with masks. Now you're allowed to have plexiglass. It depends on whether or not you can afford the plexiglass, because obviously at the ministry level, we will be able to pay for that, but it'll take about several months for us to reimburse those those costs. And for the students, obviously, it's quite unusual again. And I must say that not much has been learned. And if we had the luxury of talking about emergency distance learning and emergency kind of like getting accustomed to the emergency, we no longer can pretend that this is now emergency anymore. It's not extraordinary. We have to learn to live with the virus. The virus will be here. And as the Swedes show us, we need to have the vaccine to actually be able to kind of make sure that we live in a relatively stable society. So until then, and this is the next question you'll ask, Nina, I know, so I'll stop here, is we just need to adapt and we have to move faster. And higher education institutions, and not just in Slovenia, by the way, Dan, this is my Leeds library background, which is where I'm an academic in. We just are slow in embracing change, as we are slow in harvesting and harnessing the benefits of all things digital, because, you know, nothing beats ex cathedra, as Dan and Eva said. You know, you come into the classroom, you do your show, you really get all the emotions from your students, from your all 600 students looking into the screen in front of them, because, you know, they are digital natives, they have Macs, they have screens in front of them, and then you go home. Whereas now I can easily share with you, I spent 3 days recording a 60-minute video, which I will be playing to my students in China in the middle of a night or in the middle of who knows when. So I think we have to learn how to live with that. And for us as the state, we really need to make sure not only that our teaching staff are properly skilled and equipped, but also have proper 21st century equipment to actually do that with.
Thank you very much. Dr. Podjet, you are very active on social media, for example, on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter. So social media can be used to study and to understand how the society is functioning when stuck between the walls. So were you able to notice any active involvement in social media debate also by the students, or did they remain more or less silent within their narrow environment or balloons? Am I asking because I'm asking this because many of these socioeconomic changes that are being started due to the pandemic will influence their study, careers, employment, and other possibilities. So they seem to be very passive when observing, not professionally. Am I right?
First of all, about my use of social media. So this gesture that I didn't unpress mute, this is another sign that I'm actually not a digital native. About my use of social media, I think I have a problem actually with social media. I'm overusing it, and as many other people at the moment. So we spend too much time online. We watch in screens of smartphones 4 hours per day on average. And plus 4 hours per day on average television, and plus a couple of hours per day we watch screens at work of computers. So we spend most of the time in front of computers, and it's worrying statistics also because we move around outside of our safe zone very little. We spend indoors, by the way, over 90% of time, and this is last year's statistics. So this year's is even worse, I suppose. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, the World Health Organization results are shocking about how little young ones move. Not only students, but even younger primary or secondary school students. So it worries me a lot, and I want to get unplugged. So this is why I'm using certain tools to get unplugged from the social media, and I try to use it as little as possible. Lately, more or less for advertising things that I do or my students do or we do in different projects. So this is my main tool for social media, but for using the social media. But you asked me about the students. You have this impression that they are not loud enough, or on social media they're not communicating, and I think you have a completely wrong impression. So you're not looking at the right place. You can ask Ines Holzeger where the students are. They're not on Facebook. Why? Because parents and grandparents are on Facebook, and 60 plus is the fastest growing generation on Facebook, and the young ones are using Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and other communication tools like we did 20 years ago. We didn't go to the bars where our parents were. We tried to find clubs and other places which are separate from the world of grown-ups or adults or our parents. And therefore, if we want to understand the students and really communicate with them, we have to find out more about their worlds, offline and online. And we just keep complaining now, like the students are not active enough, they're very passive, they don't do anything, maybe they're on their phones doing, but we don't know what they're doing. I mean, maybe they're doing a revolution at the moment. I don't know. Again, a question for Ines. What are you doing? Are you planning a revolution of any kind? So very interesting things are going on. We just have to look at the right places.
Ines, will you answer? Are you preparing a revolution via Instagram and TikTok, or what's going on?
No, but we are, of course, active and organizing, like I said, with the project IMEC is doing. So we actively try to propose ideas, resolutions on how to encourage more youth to stand up and speak up.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Nina, you have to unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, another on.
Yes, one. Okay. Mr. Clausen, what is your foundation's opinion regarding the targeted financial support for the higher education students who have lost essential employment and income as a result of the pandemic and lockdown? And this is also, again, danger for the autumn and winter. For example, as we already talked, in Slovenia, everybody got 150 euro for the last period, regardless of the family's financial standard or students' involvement in the job market. So what about the future measures?
So I cannot speak for the foundation as a whole because we do not have an official position. I think in general, especially in international comparison, a lot of the measures that I mentioned previously are good. But of course, there's also substantial criticism. German liberals in particularly have pointed out that the speed with which those measures were introduced was far too slow. So 4 months as for an emergency measure, that basically meant that some student careers were already shattered because students simply ran out of money, because they lost a job, for example. And then there's a large problem in German student finance, which became especially visible during Corona, and that's that the financial position of the parents matters. So it is assumed that parents are going to support their children financially, but some might own a house, but they still don't have a regular income, which would be sufficient. Others don't want to support their student because their child is too long on Facebook or studies the wrong subject or something like that. So one lesson learned is that it would really be good to have a student finance system that's independent from the parents. And we also have some concrete numbers from the federal ministry regarding the number of applications for those emergency aid, and we can see that a lot of those applications were actually declined. So in May, out of the roughly 20,000 applications that were made, 1,500 were declined, and out of the 82,000 applications in June, only 64,000 were processed after a few weeks. It was also too slow, and a total of more than 25,000 applications were declined. And those reasons could be very banal. Someone could have lost their job, but he or she wasn't dismissed due to Corona, or didn't say on the official dismissal letter that it was because of Corona. So the application was rejected, and all sorts of these bureaucratic banalities could be really painful for students. Also because they were left hanging for quite some time. And then the other lesson learned, and I think that was already mentioned by Ines, is that there was a lot of insecurity when it came to residency requirements and the issue of visas, especially for students studying in Germany coming from abroad. And I think that could have been, would have been good if there was a transparent and sort of generous solution at the very beginning, and one that also considered that people could now study in the university in one country, but lived at another one. So we could have avoided a lot of stress and a lot of shattered dreams if we had been more generous with regards to that at the very beginning.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm glad that we already have some questions from our audience. And the first one is for Mrs. Holzega. So what mental stress do you experience or did you experience, maybe you personally, or if you have data for other students during online classes?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it's, yeah, I personally experienced it a bit, but in my environment, I saw it also a lot, that this disconnect from people was a huge stress. So as I was already saying, this not being able to quickly talk about something in between group work, that put a lot of pressure on the time we had online. And another thing I think that was very pressuring was to always be available, because you are not outside, you're stuck inside, isolated, so you can have classes, you can have group works, and this put a lot of extra stress on it. So students were not sitting at home partying or doing whatever. They were still studying, and studying online, I think, was, for at least for myself, even more challenging than being able to go to the library, have my working period there, go home and unwind. Just this constant stress, I would say, was very difficult.
Thank you. My question again. So what about Erasmus exchanges and other forms of internationalization? What do you think will happen in the following year? So will they be reformed, and will we go digital also on exchanges? Or what are your suggestions to European Commission or some other institutions?
Yeah, well, that's a big question. I'm not I don't know what the future will bring. I certainly hope that Erasmus will stay, that it will be even enhanced, because after the COVID crisis, after we've seen this restriction of movement, these national barriers that were experienced, and just having countries say, yeah, if you're from this country, you cannot enter. I think it's really important to get back to Erasmus, to the idea of having an exchange, of working on an open society. And I think it's really important to enhance that even now, after the period of the pandemic. But on the other hand, I also think that universities need to consider alternatives to mandatory study periods abroad, because a lot of times this was now not possible. And as we were already talking about possible not adherence to the standard period of study, this would be one thing that could stand in the way of a successful graduation.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. Amelie von Zweigberg, we have a question in a chat. Why do you think that more countries did not follow your decision not to wear masks and other stuff? And do you think that your decision gave, not your personal, of course, Swedish, gave people in Sweden more positive thinking and confidence? Therefore, was it easier for your students also in general?
Mm-hmm. I think face mask is an example of a rather easy political decision. It doesn't cost a lot of money. It's something up to the person to manage. So, and it might be a way to show you as a politician that you're full of power and so on. So, yeah, I think it was a good decision for us not to have obligatory face masks, though we have had a lot of discussion about face masks obligation on the metro in Stockholm. As I said, we're very sparsely populated country, but in Stockholm we have a metro system where a lot of people travel every day. I'm not sure about if students were feeling more energetic or so on because of this lack of face masks. I think most people were really anxious and maybe depressed during the spring as everywhere else. We were looking at the television and on smartphones all the time for news about the progression.
Okay, thank you very much. Were there any support measures for students by the Swedish government? Any specific support, either financial or psychological, any systems? Or was it too quick and too short period in this first wave?
No, we have a national system for economic loans to students, so we haven't had that kind of problem with the economic phase or part of it. The thing that we had was, of course, like in all other countries, we had all these teachers at universities who weren't really there when it comes to online education. So the government put in 3 million euros for the universities to cope with online training, and another 6 million euro for more online education. So we had extra summer courses, for example. So it would be possible for all these youngsters who didn't get any summer job to study at the university instead. I think that was a real struggle for many young adults, that there were their jobs who disappeared, restaurants, hotels, all tourist sector, just disappeared, and mostly there were young people working there, and all of a sudden they hadn't got money enough. So as long as they study, they would have this national loans, but when they were not studying, they hadn't got an income, so they had to go back to parents maybe during summer holiday, and the poor parents, they had to pay for them. So a lot of people did study instead during summertime. That way they could receive more national money as loans for that time.
Thank you very much. Dr. Javornik, let's go back to you. So the situation for autumn and winter is very unpredictable. It was quite different 1 month ago when we started to plan this event compared to this week and maybe next few days. So what are the possible scenarios for higher education system in Slovenia till next summer even? You have a magic ball or something like this?
Actually, I do, because, science is actually showing us that until vaccine is being safely used and available to the great majority, because we need quite a big proportion of the society to receive the vaccine, we'll live in a cycle of epidemic and kind of cooling off and cooling down periods. So, which is why the guidelines that we prepared in close partnership with unions, with student organization, with all the senior leadership of public universities, is actually flexible enough to allow universities, as well as the entire higher education system, to quite rapidly adapt to the situation, but still recognizing the pedagogical needs of their own discipline. Because, you know, like as coming from social sciences, you know, you can do a lot of work online, but if you come from science or engineering, there's significantly less that you can do in an online space. So we have to ensure, and we have to be flexible enough to allow that a university as big as Ljubljana's university, for example, university as an institution, does allow its disciplinary richness to grow, as well as securing that students do not pay the price. And we need to make sure that that students can go and do their practical sites of placements in hospitals, in elderly homes, so that their student year, as Ines said, is not put to halt. But how to do that, as we are cycling between epidemic and the peaks and the spikes, is rather challenging. And we really are hoping that not only universities, but faculties at more decentralized universities, such as University of Ljubljana, will continue to support their students, because the issue can no longer be online versus on-site. And it is really status quo versus engaged, relevant, student-centered learning and teaching wherever it takes place. And I think that the most important tools that we do have to enact a transformation are either plexiglass or Zoom. There are open minds as teachers, as lecturers, and there are open hearts even. And there is a good reason to shift focus towards what extra help this year's cohort will need to achieve their goals, which is why we kept pushing universities to give, to put extra support towards the freshers, the first year students who have been struggling ever since last year. They haven't even come to the university. We already have about 100 active cases of COVID among students only after a week of reopening universities. So I think the winter will be incredibly challenging for all of us. So the advice is to push whatever is possible online, so that the rest of the educational system, and particularly the elementary schooling and kindergartens and nurseries, are kept face-to-face, can be kept face-to-face, but also that the parts of the academic units and modules that require face-to-face provision can be kept on campus. So very insecure, but online is the safest way to go for this year.
Today is today, tomorrow is tomorrow. Like that.
That's right. Although I do wish that the state on this occasion, you know, could guide the sector better, but we hope that giving, you know, hopefully giving the relatively flexible guidelines, that would be possible.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Podjed, do you have any suggestions to Slovenian government or ministries and to EU policymakers in order to support the students in both short and longer term? So in the direction that this support will enable us to remain Homo sapiens, not Homo Covidens, if it is okay to say Homo sapiens, or should we develop?
No, it's not okay. We should switch to something else, to a new species. But yes, I do have an advice, very general advice. So to start using the people or student-centered approaches in developing any kind of solutions. So therefore, I'm really happy that Ines is here with us. And I think in any next roundtable or workshop like this one, we will need more students, because we shouldn't develop the solutions for the students. We should develop solutions with students and invite them to the meeting rooms, invite them to develop the solutions that are made for them. Not only students, also the other parts, the teachers, some of them are here today, but we have to bring all stakeholders together to find the most adequate solutions for everyone. And in this way, we will be able to survive not only through this school year, because in my opinion, as I said at the beginning of this session, this is only the beginning. So we are making a transition now globally from the risk society to the surveillance society, and this will not go away. Even if we have a cure or some kind of solution for COVID, first of all, I think that a quarter of people believe at this moment, not only because of the pandemic, but because of the fake news that is spreading around, that what is going on is all fake, that if there is a vaccine, it's actually designed by Bill Gates, and they will implant microchips in our brains, and they will make us zombies by using 5G solutions and so on. So the world is in a turmoil, and I'm actually very optimistic about the future. I mean, we should be worried about our privacy, about this kind of safety, not only health, and we should again look around from our caves on the other side of the walls around us and see what is going on with the planet. We just put under the carpet problems with a climate crisis. I mean, Greta Thunberg disappeared from the media, and the media is completely taken over by the virus. I'm sure this year, the person of the year by Time magazine will be the virus. There's no other option. So we have to look again to these problems, which are much more worrying, and not to be stuck here only with this virus, and find solutions for the future, which will be sustainable also in this way, that all participants, all stakeholders will accept them. So saying that I'm very optimistic, one thing is that we have changed our habits significantly in the last 6 months, but not only how we shake hands, like how we greet each other, how we move, how we communicate. I mean, this is something radically new. And for the first time in a very long time, we have managed to decline the CO2 emissions globally. So this is a kind of new trend. And I'm really looking forward to this kind of solutions. But we, at the same time, we started using internet more and more and more. And I'm not worried only because we are the screen has become our main window to the reality. I'm also worried because the internet uses huge amounts of energy. So currently it uses approximately 4% of energy, and it's similar to the emissions produced by airplanes last year. So I don't know if this is a sustainable solution, but I think we should get, first of all, a fourth time to get out. Like Ines said before, we're stuck in front of the computers. We're always available, and this is not good for Homo sapiens. So if we want to make a new kind of society, we have to be able to switch off from the digital reality.
Thank you very much. Dr. Boštjančić, you as a psychologist, can you add something? So what to change, what to improve by different stakeholders supporting the students in the future?
To come out healthy, psychologically healthy, in my opinion, also the leadership is very important. And in this situation, we have some groups, so a group of students, a group of professors, but the leadership of our university, of the ministry, of our country, I think that we need the trust, respect, we need clear communication, up-to-date communication. I think this we are forgetting that the hierarchy in Slovenia is quite strong. And usually when we feel insecure, we need strong walls, strong borders, we need something to hang on. So very clear information. I like the information I heard from Amelie that in Sweden, they are planning for a year what is going on, but our government is changing our daily habits on daily basis, our habits on daily basis. So in my opinion, for university life would be much easier if we can plan our semester. So for 4 months in advance, what is going on? It would be easier for us as professors and also for the students. Even we are all missing the live communication inside our classrooms, still to have this psychological security for the next 4 months would be much easier for all of us that we know what our borders of moving, living, commuting are going to be. So this is, I think, this is also very crucial in this situation in the future period.
Thank you very much. Mr. Clausen, you already mentioned that the German case was quite dispersed regarding the solutions. But for example, we all know that there are vulnerable groups either in economic sense or special education needs and disabilities or mental illnesses concept. But what about the support to these groups? So who will identify them? Who should help them? Should this be done again on regional level, national level, or EU level? What kind of measures should be taken?
I mean, generally speaking, some of the measures that I mentioned previously in terms of financial support are, of course, also very relevant to people from disadvantaged backgrounds. And as I said, the financial support also takes into consideration the economic background of the student and his or her parents. I would also say that clear rules and less bureaucratic hurdles and also less risk of applications being denied, especially when so much money is already on the table, it would help. A few weeks in terms of delay or insecurity can really make a huge difference. When it comes to students with handicap, disability, or also students who are already parents, so who have children on their own, they are also, they can access certain additional benefits that come from unemployment benefits that is usually not open for other students. So there's some additional support. But I do think the big blind spots, so to speak, are students who are already struggling with depression or who have some form of mental health issue. And in Germany, out of the total of 470,000 students, 86,000 students suffer from depression, and that are numbers from 2018, so pre-corona. And we need to make sure that we provide them not only with financial aid, but also with counseling, etc., because it's very clear that Corona is taking a huge toll, especially on those students. And then when we talk about additional measures, I think the most important thing was mentioned before, but I think it's should be mentioned again, and that's also clearer rules regarding visa and borders. So some students, were not able to see their loved ones for a very long period of time. This whole idea of love is not tourism is relevant, especially for students who might be in a cross-country relationship, but who are not able to see their partners in the meantime. So I think those would be measures as well that could help people from people who are struggling, or students who are struggling at the moment.
Maybe one question for Eva, and it can be also answered by Ines if you have any opinion. So I already read that World Bank Group reports about the possibility of stigma by the employers to qualifications attained by the so-called class of COVID. So is there any worry that employers will have different approaches to students of this generations of this year and next years?
Based on previous researches, the crisis period influenced the most the younger generation. And this crisis will definitely stay with them or with Ines or your generation. So I think we need, maybe, I don't like to predict in advance. So I don't like to talk about these negative stereotypes in advance. So let's see and be optimistic and support our students to work out as much as possible outside in the nature, and to really to train your brains and successfully finish the university. And that's all what we can do. But I think maybe Ines, would be your opinion also very crucial on Nina's question, sorry.
Yeah, this is of course something that that is a risk. I agree with everything that was just said. My generation, the generation after, is most affected if we look at especially education. through the pandemic, and it could have quite a severe impact on our future. And that's why I think the most important thing to do is to give youth a place on decision-making tables, on as Dan already said, when it comes to environment, to the Conference for the Future of Europe, everything where our future is also impacted. This would be a chance to also involve youth and maybe then not have the stigma of a lost generation.
Okay, thank you very much. Mrs. von Zweigberg, maybe one last Swedish specifics about the future. Do you think will be any different also in the future, or you are repeating all the time that every country is specific?
I don't know what about your countries, but in Sweden anyway, most students start their studying at university during autumn. So when the epidemic came this spring, the groups at the university who started online studying, they knew each other. They had been together for at least one semester before. But now we have all these totally new groups who haven't met each other, and many of them will now struggle with online education with this group, with teachers they do not know, they have never met. I think this is a big problem, how to manage this in a good social way. And I also think that we should see this explosion of COVID. We have local outbreaks of COVID at 2 universities in Sweden, and they're all connected to parties among students who have started to study. I think this is very human. You would like to get to know each other, but on the other hand, that's a problematic approach now with COVID-19. So how could we do this in a better way? I think we should try to learn from each other how to make it possible to get to learn each other, even though we don't see each other so much IRL.
Okay, I think we all agree. Thank you very much. So we have a question from audience. Andras, could you please, Andras Kompolczak, okay, put on the mic and ask our panelists, please. Andras, you raised the hand, or was it a digital mistake? No, no mic. Okay. Any other questions? Mistake. Okay. Okay, accepted. So will any panelists ask anybody from this group, or are we already tired of being together online? Should we take a beer somewhere in the city before they close the bars in Slovenia, or what? Coke. Okay.
But people always find solutions also for the closed bars, and this is what worries me a little bit too, because now we're already making stocks in Slovenia, at least in cellars and so on, because we're expecting the next wave and the closing of bars and other important institutions. So people will keep socializing even in this way. So during the first wave of the pandemic, we started these online pubs and drinking together, socializing. I'm just wondering what will happen now in the near future. But we are better prepared also equipped with beer, wine, and other important goods.
And important drinking holidays are coming. So baking chestnut, St. Martin, happy December. So we will see many challenges, of course. So, okay, I think it's time to finish. So many thanks to all of you who were eager to participate in this panel. We all had interesting insight into our recent and extremely exciting past, and probably we all agree that we are stepping into a very unpredictable future. In this context, I would like to greet all the participants in the name of our COVID SOTS Lab research team with the words of the Dean of our faculty, who finishes each meeting with "stay negative." Okay? So have a nice evening, have a nice semester. Thank you all for being with us, and greetings to all parts of the world.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Hola,
Ciao. Ciao. Tschüss. Bye. Hola. Everything.